Welcome everybody. Welcome to this extraordinary meeting of full council on Wednesday the 20th. That's the minutes from the last one, sorry. Where's the, what day is it? Oh, 5th of October. Wednesday the 5th of October. Sorry, I was looking at the last minute. Thank you. Everyone. In case of an emergency, there are no planned fire drills during this meeting. If you hear the fire alarm sound, please treat it as a real emergency and evacuate the building via the nearest safe escape route. The nearest escape route via the stairs to your left as you leave the council chamber or public gallery. Exit via the door at the back of the building and walk across the inner car park to the evacuation point, which is the pavement opposite the police station. The lifts can't be used in the event of an emergency. Please do not re-enter the building until you're advised it is safe to do so by a member of staff. I would like to advise both members of the public and press this meeting is being recorded and broadcast live. Mobile phones should be switched off unless they are being used for the meeting. Please only speak when I ask you to do so and speak clearly into the microphone. Can we all make sure we do use our microphones this evening? Apologies have been received from Councillor Ellis. And Councillor Outlaw, I believe. Is there any other apologies? We now move on to the agenda. To approve the minutes of the extraordinary full council meeting held on the 20th of July 2022. I propose we approve the minutes, and do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Andre. Do we all agree on the minutes? Do we vote by affirmation? Thank you. Yep, that's the minutes agreed. Right, declaration. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any members wishing to declare any interests? Oh, Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the motions, 9A, the cost of living emergency, it was just to pick up that the motion asked for us to champion a real living wage.
Yes, Mr. Potter's going to read out notice. Hello.
Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, someone. Sorry, another declaration.
Sorry, Chair, can you clarify then? Because I expect quite a few of us in this room are employers on the Isle of Wight as well. So do we need to declare an interest if we are?
Okay, yeah. So I'll answer that.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Chairman. In terms of the point about being employers on the island, I think sort of unless it's directly affected, it would be sort of too remote to be prejudicial. So I think there's clearly been a abundance of caution in terms of declaration, which is always gratifying to hear. But in answer to your specific point, I think it'll be too remote. The chairman asked me to mention a little bit earlier, and I'll just mention it just for completeness, under the declarations of interest. Members, this is particularly for members of the public, but members of the council will no doubt recall that in April of this year, I granted a dispensation under the Localism Act in order for all members to be able to be engaged in this important matter on item 8 in terms of the draft planning island strategy, so that you know, if you have any disclosure of pecuniary interest arising from item 8, it is covered off and protected by the issue of a dispensation, which is in force for a period of 4 years from 8th of April this year. Just
Councillor Medland.
I was going to monitoring officer has just cleared that for me. Thank you.
Okay, so we covered the declarations of interest. Now to item 3, which is the public questions. Total time allowed for written public questions is 15 minutes, and we have several written questions. I believe we have somebody in the gallery that's in person. Would they like to read out their question? It's Mr. McLeod. Written questions. Mr. McLeod.
Thank you. Hi, yeah, James Cave. This is my written question regarding the dips. If this is approved,
Sorry, James. It's the written questions that have been submitted in advance.
sorry.
So I have 6 here, but it looks like only one person is attending. But we will come to questions on the evening. I think I've got your in this pile here. So do we have Mr. McLeod in person? McLeod.
The written question I submitted, I haven't got a copy of it at the moment, so you have to read it out to refresh my memory. I have a verbal question which I'd like to ask, which I'll do later.
Okay.
But you can read out my written question, I assume.
Yes. And I'll read out your question for you. The question is, please explain why the draft island planning strategy under consideration is being based on incorrect hypothetical data on population growth and demographic trends to calculate housing numbers required for the island when recent accurate real data from the 2021 census is available and demonstrates that a much lower number of houses is required each year. I believe Councillor Fuller is going to answer this question.
Good evening, Mr. McLeod. The draft IPS uses government-attached methodology to determine housing need for the island. This is the expected starting point of the approach towards housing need as set out in the National Planning Policy Framework, the NPPF, and the Planning Practice Guidance. The draft island planning strategy then sets out that this housing need cannot be met in full due to the unique characteristics of the island housing market, and the housing requirement being planned for in the draft IPS is a third lower than the standard methodology. Using Census 2021 data published in late June 2022 would mean that the council would not be using the standard methodology as the starting point for calculating housing need. Therefore, is in line with paragraph 61 of the NPPF, a case for exceptional circumstances would have to be constructed. It is anticipated that this would mean a delay of 12 to 18 months to construct the case, rewrite the evidence base, and redraft the plan document. There is no guarantee that the exceptional circumstances case would result in a significantly lower housing number. For example, any authority pursuing this approach is also directed to take account of past under-delivery against adopted plan numbers when calculating housing need. Whilst the risk of the draft IPS being found unsound at the examination process increases significantly. Paragraphs 23 to 52 of the full council report, IPS full council report 210922, final draft V2 PDF, provides more information on this issue. Thank you.
May I reply or not?
No, I don't think there's no second question.
That's a fairly pointless exercise then.
Okay. There are other written questions which I believe a written answer will be sent to those. Is that? I think they've all.
I'm very happy to respond to these questions because I think it's quite important for members, members to be aware of that response, to be able to make up their mind when we get to item 8 on the agenda. So I'm quite happy to take all questions that are put to me.
We'll do the oral questions next. Yeah, if you could clarify that.
But thank you, Councillor Brady. Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the procedural rules, Part 4B, Rule 15, which ordinarily would only apply for ordinary meetings, does not in itself, as far as I can ascertain, cover the point in the rule regarding the asking of supplemental questions by members of the public. So that's not in the rule. The rule doesn't apply anyway to the extraordinary council meeting. The reason questions have been put on the agenda at the request of the chairman of the council in order to facilitate open governance, and that's what's happening at the moment. So a question has been put, an answer has been given, and there's no right for a supplemental for a member of the public to be submitted.
Councillor Brady?
Chair, that sounds entirely bizarre, to be frank. If this is an extraordinary meeting, there probably shouldn't be questions from the public anyway. I'm not against that at all, but there probably shouldn't be. However, if you as chair, it's absolutely your right, to put them on, then surely it should be the due process that's adopted for questions from members of the public, not some half-baked methodology. It should be the full process if we're going to have members. It just seems like we're shutting down members of the public, which is surely not what a transparent and accountable council wants to see.
Chairman and Mr. Brady, can I help you out here? I've got a supplementary question which I will ask later, and I hope it will cover the points raised. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Brady.
Mr. Potter, if you want to explain.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Brady, for raising the point. By way of clarification, although this particular procedural rule does not apply simply because it's an extraordinary council meeting, I just wanted to sort of clarify the point which you mentioned earlier, by way of correction. Supplemental questions can normally be asked under the particular rule. It's on overleaf, which I've just come across. So it's effectively, it's a matter of discretion as to whether a supplementary question is put. And I'm grateful to a member of the public, to Mr. McLeod, I think it was, to indicate that he wants to ask an order. Thank you.
Councillor Mosdale?
Yeah, I'm getting slightly confused here in my own little world. So at one point it's an extraordinary general meeting and we are now running it like a full council, but then the monitoring officer, and can I also request that the monitoring officer leans over his microphone and speaks clearly, because some people are struggling to understand some of this gobbledygook. I don't get how it's part of it's running like a full council, and then you're telling the members of the public that it's not running like a full council because it's an extraordinary general meeting. You know, I know I'm really good at buying shoes and handbags, but you know, this is just getting a bit ridiculous.
Chairman, yes, certainly. By way of background, when this matter was originally thought to be put before council in April of this year, questions from members of the public were not contemplated. Following a number of representations put forward as to the fact that a number of members thought it appropriate that members of the public should be given the opportunity to ask questions, particularly on this extraordinary council meeting dealing with the draft island planning strategy, then the chairman of the council, when calling this particular extraordinary meeting, which he's entitled to do under the legislation, set out the business to be transacted by this extraordinary council meeting, and specifically heard the representations of some members made earlier in this year and has actually specifically put on the agenda paper the right for questions to be put by members of the public. So the point to make in a succinct way is members are transacting business at this meeting which has been agreed and put on the agenda, and therefore the questions have been allowed to be put. Thank you.
Are we clear now? No? Public questions have been allowed, and I was told supplementary wasn't because of the constitution, but I'm happy to take supplementary if that's what the questioner wants. So if Mr. MacLeod would like to ask the question, I will allow that, but I was just given the yes, please do.
Right, so this is actually in response to Mr. Fuller's very, very comprehensive reply to me, which clearly has been, researched and used a great deal of data. Into a recession, which is going to cool the enthusiasm of developers to build new houses and the ability of purchase. The government is going to announce a abolition of centrally generated housing targets. Representatives, some of you are trying to force through an island plan, which, while it's good in some places, is badly flawed in other places. It's based on inaccurate data, notwithstanding what you said, Paul. It doesn't represent the views of a significant number of island residents. It doesn't afford adequate protection to greenfield sites, and it will not produce affordable housing. This is not about NIMBYism, elitism, party politics, or equal misery for all, as some of the councillors appear to feel. It's about producing a strategy for island housing, which does take account of the island's unique circumstances, and which will facilitate the building of the right number of genuinely affordable houses in appropriate and sustainable locations. It must prioritise brownfield sites, and it should not needlessly offer up developer-identified greenfield sites, as this plan currently does. It's extraordinary to hear how many of you today seem to be prepared to ignore the fact that the draft island plan you're voting on is based on incorrect housing and demographic data, and it will not serve the best interests of the Isle of Wight. The plan is nearly right, but it will not be right until it's based on real numbers and real data. It would be an extraordinary contortion of logic if any of the Green Party candidates or any member of the council with any shred of rationality voted for this flawed strategy. Explain to me why you will not take the time now to use real data as a basis for a robust, evidence-based strategy which will be used to guide housing policy in the island for the next 15 years.
Councillor Fuller, are you able to answer that, please?
I don't really disagree with what you're saying, Mr. MacLeod. I think one of the issues that we've been trying to do, and one of the things that we've been trying to focus on the island planning strategy, is to suppress the housing numbers that the government methodology has imposed upon us. We're doing the very best we can under the current regime. Now, I know what you mentioned about the ONS data. The issue that I have is that uses ONS data. There are two authorities that have. But they are both national park authorities. We have to play to a different rule book. The rule book we have to play to is for local planning authorities. If there was the potential to be able to use that data, then we would use it. There is the opportunity within the island planning strategy to pause that at any time in the coming year. So if the rules do change, that offers officers and the council the opportunity to press the pause button and to be able to work with those figures. At the moment, that hasn't happened. And the guidance that we are getting is that we should continue pressing ahead with our planning strategy, as other councils have been advised to do as well. So I understand exactly where you're coming from, Mr. MacLeod, and I welcome your input and the conversations that we've had both now and in the past. Thank you very much.
You correctly point out it's guidance that you're receiving. It isn't an immutable law that you have to follow this government methodology. If you can provide evidence which justifies arguing
We're going to go on to the oral questions now. There's no right to reply to the answer. He's had a supplementary question. No. So number one for the oral questions is Cameron Palin.
Thank you, Chair. Can the council provide reassurance from inappropriate development, such as that proposed at Norris Castle and Spring Hill, helping to preserve the island's unique characteristics, as well as provided much needed affordable housing? Thank you.
Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Chair. I think as member for Heritage and Environment, it probably falls to me to answer this. I'm not going to comment on specific sites, though. I think that would be inappropriate. I'm happy to give reassurance that the draft plan contains 19 different environmental policies, and 6 of those are dedicated to protecting various types of green and open space across the island. I can give some examples. EV6, for example, protects over 3,300 hectares of green and open space. EV7, 37 different areas, another 157 hectares. Those were areas suggested by the local community and gives them a protection level similar to Green Belt. And EV10, protecting settlement identity, details 12 different gaps between settlements across the island and another 3,500 hectares protected there. I think the figures make more sense if you say that in comparison, there are 28 of the 28 proposed housing allocations. That covers a total area of 192 hectares, that being, by my figures, roughly just 2.6% protected that I've outlined. I could go on. Policy G2, priority locations for growth are within settlement boundaries, and outside those boundaries, development will only be supported if it meets a specific local need. And in relation to the affordable housing point, policy AFF1 seeks to introduce deeper discounts from market value for our affordable housing to make it affordable for island residents. While all of the proposed allocations over 10 units are over 10 units, meaning all will be required to provide on-site affordable housing. We've also got policy EV1, which sets out the approach to listed buildings, which obviously relates to the detailed substantial harm to designated proposals must positively conserve and enhance the significance. And that was a policy that was worked on with Historic England, were adopted. So I hope those examples from Palin, and indeed the earlier question who mentioned Greenfield site.
Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please. Can the council confirm that the council's views, as well as strengthening the use of town, place and councils to undertake such plans if they haven't done so?
Absolutely, Cameron. It was a major, and as you know, you were there, I think, on several meetings. One of the issues that were raised was about recognition of quite strongly in the NPPF, and I think what we want to do and community councils. Apologies, Councillor Brodie, for missing out community council across the island. I think working with our town and parish councils are key. We can't do everything that town and parish councils, what we can, and any support that we can offer to that this council does. Thank you.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. I think the question was, does the island plans? And Councillor Fuller replied, absolutely, but not in some communities. Agrees. I just invite him to just clarify that it actually gets rid of some neighbours. I mean, I think he's wrong, and I think he knows he's wrong. And I don't think he would mind clarifying.
Yeah.
I don't think this is the point to do that.
Answer Mr. Palin's supplementary, and Paul beat me to it. It might that my earlier answer, and policy C15. I think you'll find want to look at it, reference it directly. It provides explicit support for the preparation of neighbourhood. And also, I could also mention again policy AFF1, which can actively support such local.
Question number 2. You'd like to ask a question?
I was going to ask the same question as the previous questioner, so maybe I can go figures and the 2014 estimates.
Yeah, yep.
Suggest the 2014 planning figures as a starting point. To say that in the framework or the guidelines, to say that if there are later
advice that I have received is that projected housing figures are the figures that local that might not seem right in your eyes, and it that we are as supposed to go along in the coming months or years, but at the moment that is where we are. Can be adopted, can be adapted.
Doesn't exist at the moment. Is that okay? Thank you, Chair.
That,
No,
that was the supplementary. Okay, thank you. Okay, I have.
If approved, how many rental homes affordable to islanders to rent at the 4 bands would your plan guarantee to deliver annually?
I don't think I've had notice of that question, so in the plan that is looking at island affordable. I think every single member of this council would like to see the islands. One of the things that we have tried to embed within the island affordable homes is not the either rent or purchasing houses. Ideally, we want from our perspective, we want to suppress their rent with a recession looming, and we know the plight that many islanders are going to be under. And I think what we planning strategy as adaptable as we can to current. We hope will get better, but we can do what we can. Very many other plans have tried to do that, but we put forward an evidence very important when you take it to the planning inspector, because we have to back up everything that we say with the evidence to live in new island homes. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller, do you want to follow? Do you think you've covered it?
Well, if you're happy with that response.
Can't put a figure on that then.
I can't put a figure on, but if you would like that figure, then I'm quite happy.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Please, go ahead.
Prioritise delivering the homes needed by those on the housing register, and if so,
Councillor Fuller, you'd like to answer that one?
Could I be a little affordable housing guru on the cabinet?
What I'd like to say is that we came before scrutiny, and I said that we needed some housing manager, and we're working alongside the Southern and developers as well, to see if we can introduce what we need as an island and the various requirements. You know, I've got lists here that I could read out, but I really don't think I should, because one, it would take too long, and you'd like to come back, and no doubt. But what I'd say is that 2,523 families were in need of accommodation. So you're talking 2,500. And I also noted that I've got there's a written question where I've said that I can't fix it. I don't think there's anyone in this room that could actually glibly say they can fix 2,523 families in need at this time, when we've got families with children living in caravans and in B&B. So let's put things into the perspective that they are. We will be trying every trick in the book. As I said, we're speaking with the rental providers, talking with private developers, setting up the much vaunted development company stroke property company through the council to be a virtually all embracing vehicle that we can not only build, rent, but we can also purchase. I would also look to purchase off plan if they're of the requirement that we need. But I can tell you that 1 bedroom properties on the Isle of Wight, as of August 2022, 1,229 people have put themselves down for 1 bedroom properties. 2 bedroom properties, 763, 3 bedroom, 407, 4 bedroom, 104, and so it goes on to match up to that 2,523. It's a tough ask, but we're doing all we can. We have regular meetings with the rental providers, and don't forget that some of these rental providers haven't built on this island for a number of years, and trying to get people to build in this economic climate is quite a difficult task. Because I can assure you that the new housing manager has taken that on board and it's got agreement from the rental providers that I've mentioned, the housing associations, and they're actually interested in taking that forward. We're looking forward to absolutely trying to move this forward. It's a dire situation, as I say, and when I hope I'll have time to come in on written question number 3, because I'm certainly not. There's no dereliction of duty as far as I'm concerned with regards to actually trying to find homes for these families.
Councillor Stevens, would you?
Most definitely.
Thank you. Thank you. Question 4, I have a Paul Townsend. Paul there? Paul, would you like to answer your question?
I think my question was actually answered
Okay.
a little bit earlier, but I got another one here.
Okay, go ahead.
The DIPS is said to be evidence-based, How can the public and indeed councillors here tonight believe this when the strategic manager for planning recently told the planning committee that officers' reports need only contain the evidence that supports their recommendation rather than a non-biased and balanced view presenting both sides?
That's the end of good. Would you like to supply a written answer to that one, please?
I think it would be useful to have a written answer to that question. If this was something that was mentioned at a planning committee meeting, I think Paul deserves to have a written response for that. I'd like to be able to respond to it, but I think a written response, and then if Paul wants to come back to me, by all means, please, Mr. Townsend. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that is question over, isn't it? Both written. Number 4, a councillor's official announcements. I'll give you an update on what I've been doing. So I intended my report to be very different. It was going to be focused on the big events, including the Tour of Britain final stage and Isle of Wight Day. But these events unfortunately never took place due to the passing of our much loved and respected Queen Elizabeth. I would like to thank the staff that were involved in the planning of the Tour of Britain, as I know much organising took place in advance and it was a disappointment that they were not able to see this through. During the last 2 months, I have attended a lot of events though, and the very extensive events that we have on the islands. So I've been to carnivals, a royal visit, Cows Week, Chail Show, Wolverton Garden Fair, the Classic Car Show, Business Expo, Amnesty International Isle of Wight AGM, citizenship ceremonies, Best Kept Village Awards, War Memorial Centenary and the Lord Lieutenant's Awards. So we have much to celebrate as an island, and I thank all those that put events on for us. The Sway Garden Party that I held in August raised £533. And my next Sway fundraising event is a fully booked walk during the Isle of Wight Walking Festival this Sunday. And I shall hopefully be guiding 40 walkers around the South Wight countryside. And if you'd like to take part in the walking festival, it takes place from the 8th to the 16th of October. So please visit their website for more information about the walks available. Also taking place this Sunday, the 9th of October, is a Thanksgiving service at Newport Minster at 7 p.m. It'll be an opportunity to give thanks for all the Minster has been over the last 160 years before it closes for internal restoration works. It will be led by the Archdeacon, Alika, and Bishop Jonathan will be preaching. This will be an informal service and they welcome anyone from the community who would like to attend. That's my official announcements. So then we move on to item 5, the condolences to Her late Majesty and the proclamation of King Charles III. Thursday, the 8th of September, will be a day we all remember when we heard the news that the announcement that Her Majesty the Queen had passed away. The United Kingdom witnessed the end of 70 years of unstinting public service by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. As chairman of the council, I have been honoured to be a small part in the events to commemorate her reign and the proclamation of our new king. Appreciation to all the staff that have worked on making the Isle of Wight commemorations happen in the most fitting and sensitive way to mark the occasion and give the public the opportunity to remember the monarch. I would like to open this item to other councillors who may like to express their thoughts on this. Is there anyone else that would like to mention anything? Councillor Robertson.
Chair, thank you, and I endorse the words you've used, and I'd like to express my condolences arising from the death of Her Majesty, Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and mark the proclamation of King Charles III. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pitcher. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. I, along with many others, including many in this room, was deeply saddened by the news of the passing of Her Majesty the Queen. She was a role model for millions across many generations, and her influence spread far beyond her realm and across the globe. She set a standard with her utmost duty to the nation that everyone involved in public life should aspire to. She will be greatly missed. And I note that in his first address to the nation, King Charles III dedicated himself to service by echoing the famous words of his mother. That marks a bond to his subjects that I'm sure he will bear well. I wish him every success and may he reign well.
Thank you. Councillor Jones-Evans?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think we're still reeling from the shock of losing our Queen. Many of us are, and such a change to our lives, and she's always been there. And I think the words duty and service are just synonymous with Queen Elizabeth II. And of course, we're all, well, I am supportive of our new monarch, King Charles III, and we're looking forward to what he will bring to his reign. And of course, had a life of duty and service thus far. We need to always look forward in life, and I think a way of, it's important that we remember, we have remembrance to our Queen being the longest serving monarch that we've had in this country. And on Monday at Newport and Carrisbrook Community Council, we did discuss maybe a future memorial. Now, maybe a bit early for discussions about this, but we were the councillors there, members of Newport and Carrisbrook Community Council, would like to be involved in any further future discussions or any fundraising or anything involved. So also you have a working relationship, Chair, with the Lord Lieutenant. So if I could just sort of put a marker down there that we'd love to be involved with that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones-Evans. I will pass that on. I think it's a good, lovely idea. Councillor Lilly.
Thank you. The Queen Elizabeth II visited the Isle of Wight on many occasions. She actually visited the Isle of Wight in 1965, 1968, 1987, 2004, 2012. She actually visited in 1965 and developed a lifelong interest with the Duke of Edinburgh in the hovercraft. He was always a keen promoter of the hovercraft around the world, and was known of that particular interest, but she always took an interest. And when she actually spoke at events about great British invention, she always spoke about the hovercraft. And that is one of the greatest innovations that came out of the Isle of Wight. And we are very glad that we still have the last commercial hovercraft here. She also visited Ryde in 1987 to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the sailing of the first fleet to Australia. Ryde has got a historic link, and we got a memorial of that, which the Australian government actually gave in Ryde. And she visited St Thomas's Church, and it's great fitting that now St Thomas's Church is being renovated by Ryde Town Council to be a youth innovation centre. And my father recalls her actually mentioning that St Thomas's Church at that time could be a great facility for young people. So in a way, it's saddened that she is gone, but in Ryde, we will have a new, wonderful youth innovation centre that would celebrate her interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lilly. Moving on to item 6, the Leaders' Update Report. Councillor P.C. Wilcox, would you like to speak on this item, please?
Yes, as you can see at the start of my,
I would like to suggest that in remembrance of the Queen, we stand and have a minute's silence, and in our hearts and minds, remember 75 years of fantastic service, not to just this country, but to an awfully large proportion of the world. Thank you.
I was going to say our members, second, and our members have to do that. I did think about this, and I wasn't sure whether it was appropriate, so I wanted to obviously put that on the agenda, but I am happy to do that because that is something I would have wanted if others. But Councillor Brodie.
If you're going to propose to do that, I'd like to say something as well, if you don't mind.
We ran out of time on that. Yeah, Councillor Brodie.
Okay, thank you. Like everybody, I express my condolences to any family that loses a relative. And I say that as somebody who is not a monarchist, not a royalist. I will say what I said at Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council. I do not believe in the inheritance principle of a head of state. I believe there is massive secrecy around it. I could go on and on and on. But there is no doubt that the Queen, Mrs. Windsor, whatever you want to call her, served the public of this country and wider field very well indeed for 70 odd years, over 70 years. And I recognise that. But we should never forget, and I also say I recognise that if I was in other parts of the country, I'd probably be able to be a little bit more direct in what I really feel about royalty. I recognise that on the island there is overwhelming support for the royal family. But it must not, thank you for the hissing, it's very good. Let's not forget, polls show between 25 and 35% of the population of this country do not support the monarchy. And increasingly younger people do not support the monarchy. It is an archaic institution. And whilst I express condolences to the Windsor family for the loss of their mother, I do not mark the proclamation of another monarch. I will express my view as it nears that Charles Windsor, also known as Charles III, be crowned as king sometime next year at great public expense at a time of a cost of living crisis. I will not stand as part of your minute silence whilst I understand those of you who are royalists are doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. Oh. Councillor Dorr.
May I just share an observation? I respect your views, Councillor Brodie, and actually I have you to thank for my opportunity, not to meet the Queen, but to be up there on Platinum Jubilee Day. She came out and did a bit. I disagree with the youngster statement. I took my daughter, my five-year-old, up to Green Park just the day before the flowers will be removed. All I saw was a sea of emotion. It was absolutely beautiful. Lots of images created by primary school children, secondary school children, children not just in this country, but all around the world. Monarchists or not, royalist or not, she was my boss for a number of years, as she was Councillor Ward. All I saw was love and affection for someone that had served, didn't ask to be served, didn't ask to serve, sorry, and actually someone that served in World War II. But she stepped up to the plate and she did it well. And I think if the youngsters can take something away from that, I'll bloody well stand for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, let's stand for a minute's silence in honour of our late Queen. Thank you. And moving on now to item 6, the leaders update report. Councillor P.C. Wilcox, would you like to speak on this item,
Lovely,
please?
thank you. In my first paragraph, I speak about the passing of my Queen, forever my Queen. I'm conscious that we've got rather a lot on the agenda, not least the cost of living crisis that we need to discuss. So I'm not going to speak on too much. At the last meeting, I did mention that I was going to be shoehorned out of the Isle of Wight and going to the Islands Forum. I can confirm that last week the Chief Exec and myself did attend what I felt was a really useful meeting. So I'm not going to talk on because we've got a lot of things to get through this evening. So if there are any
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. Leader, your report refers to affordable housing, and you brought forward an island planning strategy this evening, which in it has a feasibility study for Newport and the land around County Hall. That feasibility study might recommend dismantling some or all of County Hall to build housing. Are you not concerned, as I am, that the council's about to spend nearly £750,000 of public money to renovate the heating system on a building that may only have 2 or 3 more years left?
My understanding is, Councillor Robinson, that we applied for a special grant and was given the money from government. It's not council money.
But Leader, it's still public money. Are you not concerned that we're about to spend nearly £750,000 of public money on a building that may only have 2 or 3 years of life left?
May I? Thank you, Leader. I sat outside of the chamber a few years ago when the ground floor was decimated, the walls were taken down, new desks were put in, and by the way, it moved up through this building. We didn't replace the windows, but we took the walls down, and we took the walls down and recarpeted. 3.4 million. Now that's what I call a shame. That's what I call a shame, not actually looking at what we can do with a site within the town centre. And I agree with you, public money is public money. The Isle of Wight Council taxpayers' money is even more closer to my heart when people in control make those decisions. And there's a few of us in the council chamber that say you shouldn't be doing this. You should not be doing this because you could build a new county hall up at Sea Close for 3.4 million at the time. And that's all I'm going to say, because quite honestly, we can pick holes in everything. But the thing is, I've always kept stum about that after I made representation. I know Councillor Brodie did as well, because we were a little bit appalled that about that amount of money was going into this building when we've got people outside still without a house. Thank you.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Leader, you mentioned the Island Forum in your report and just verbally just now, and also just want to sort of give credence to our MP Bob Seeley, who actually made this happen through the Levelling Up white paper. I just want to really interested into actually what happened at the forum in Orkney. Would you better give us a few more details, please? I think we'd all like to hear.
Yeah, okay. So it was a bit strange because you are quite right that it was Bob Seeley, I think, that instigated this meeting. Although it would appear that when we got up there, quite a few people were taking credit that they'd managed to get it going. So my thanks to Bob. It was quite a week. I mean, I think the Chief Exec and I travelled 15 hours each way to get there. We had only 6 kilos of luggage and a bag of like this to last us 3 days. That was a bit of a challenge, it has to be said. It felt like the last plane was made of bolster wood, and I understand the Chief Exec's ears is still not particularly good. Anyway, it was what was really interesting was to know that almost all of the islands are in the same boat, which that's a bad expression, same boat. but they were all in the same boat, so to speak, as we are on the island. You've got the connectivity, and their connectivity isn't necessarily the transport and the boats, but it was actually their power. They are really vulnerable. One of the islands was left almost 3 months without electric. It's seriously bad. So that was, and of course, you know, we can boast of things. I'll come on to that later. Employment was another big issue for them. They're small islands, and just trying to have enough people to work in the different industries they were really struggling with. So there was quite a lot. I do say the Isle of Wight, they kept sort of laughing at us because we were such a big island compared to them with 1,200 people and stuff. You know, 144,000. We're quite a big island. What I would say is I've never been to anything government-y before, although I did go to a Conservative Party conference once upon a time, but I've not been to these sort of things. And I would say it was a very, very slick organisation. I mean, literally every moment of our day was planned out. So it was very structured. There was very little time really to deviate from the agenda that they did. Which was changed at the very last minute. So we were going to talk about, it was always going to be about sort of levelling up and stuff, and it was going to be talking about our connectivity as in internet, because obviously they haven't got white fibre, they haven't got BT in some of those places. So it was, and they changed it at the last minute to net zero. So we had to quickly get together paperwork and stuff for that. After explaining our many years struggle over capacity on the island and the fact that we are moving really well towards net zero, I'm really chuffed that their chief exec, Jonathan Brearley, from Ofgem, has agreed to meet us. I can't tell you how massive this is. We can't have any more solar farms. We can't produce any more power because we do not have the connectivity. And every now and again, the Ofgem will say to us, switch off the connector, you're producing too much power. That's ridiculous. And it's been an ongoing thing for so many years, I think probably about 14 years. So to actually tackle this man head on was absolutely fun. And I did go, yeah, like that. And I think I was the only one that did that reaction, but I was that chuffed that we're going to get somebody that's going to take notice. Despite reports, I can confirm that the chief exec had a very prestigious seat next to the, I've got to get this right, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster and Minister for Intergovernment Relations, the Right Honourable Nadeem Zahawi. So she actually, I mean, you know, the chief exec was very lucky to be in that position, to be sat next to him, to be able to campaign and do stuff. So, so we did meet, and I can confirm that both myself and the chief exec did manage to get in about the consultation results and the island plan. But I'm sure that if you want any more details, it would be good for Wendy to give you, because she asked 3 very technical questions. I can also confirm that in order to do a bit of impact, I didn't harass the what was her name, the Parliamentary Undersecretary for Levelling Up, Diana. We didn't go and speak to her immediately. A lot of people were speaking to her, but I can confirm that both myself and the chief exec pushed our way in towards the end, and I think I made a bit of an impression by speaking with the Parliamentary Undersecretary for Levelling Up, Diana Davison MP. We do need, the chief exec and myself, to send a number of emails as a follow-up, because I'm not going to let this lie. But I did talk to her about fluffy slippers and what time she was going to get home and what time I was. I think that was probably a good lasting thing. I'm hoping that she can run. I will be requesting that she comes and meets with us and giving, obviously, in the chief exec stuff, a big report about the levelling up and our most things. It does take me quite a lot to shoehorn me off the Isle of Wight, and I must admit I wasn't looking forward to that, because I'm not a very good traveller at the best of times. It was a really exhausting 3 days, but I consider it, surprisingly, actually, I have to admit, extremely worthwhile visit, and I'd be really chuffed if we could host the next one so that we could get them down here. Obviously, it would be different subjects, but it would be very good to have these type of people come that can give some kind of comfort to us. You know, I mean, you know, we are still struggling for the island deal. The island deal is the thing I'm really, you know, continuing to fight for, because that's the thing that's going to have the greatest impact with us. It's going to be the thing that can just lift us out. And you know what? I mean, although all of the different things that have 89, 91, 96, 2002, 2018, they keep asking us for all of these, and we keep proving that the island is without money, and anything between 10 million and 64 million. And I just think having that small cost adjustment could make such vital difference. Especially, I mean, we know the crisis that we're all coming into and stuff, and we know that adult social care is really struggling. So, to be perfectly honest, yeah, it was really worthwhile. Can I just bring the Chief Exec to mention the three things and the government ministers, because I think it's quite important.
Councillor Mosdale's first, actually.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Claire.
sorry. Councillor Mosdale.
Thank you. Leader, on page 13 of your report, there is a paragraph about Branston. And I went to the opening of Branston, although they did have to admit that they were slightly embarrassed about opening Branston. The Isle of Wight Council has £40 million at the moment to build new houses. So the borrowing facility. Okay, let me finish my question. Okay, is that all right? Thank you. So, went to Branston. Branston isn't open yet because the services aren't in place. Any developer worth their salt would get the service in place. And I find it really embarrassing as a county councillor that actually I'm the one, it's in my ward, nobody can move in. At the moment, without any services, I know we're going for net zero, but not actually being able to heat anything or do anything is ridiculous. You know, as a council, we need to get to grip with this. You know, we want to go into the world of developing, and on the first new project, we can't even put the lights on and let anybody move in. When are we going to have an actual date when this council is going to get it sorted and residents will finally move into the houses that they really need at Branston? Otherwise, I'm not going to any more open days with Barbie and Ken.
Okay, who was Barbie and Ken? Anyway, what I would say is they are moving. I would say to you, Councillor Mosdale, I checked about that everything was on track. I was reassured by the director that everything was on track. It was all amazing. Everything was going. I didn't, not trust, but I didn't listen to that advice. I went and saw other people who then told me of the issue. I can utterly assure you, I got on the phone and I was extremely curt and persistent that somebody got on the phone to SSEN immediately, and if it took all day, that's what they needed to do. And I do, within, I would say within 3 days, the boxes had gone into the housing, and I'm assured by Martin Pearl from Vector's Housing that they will be in absolutely by the end of October. I can only go by what Martin has said. I've listened to him because I think that he knows what he's talking, you know. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Mosdale. I actually asked that same question as well to the leader the other day. So,
Point of information,
sorry.
Chairman, because this is something that I've heard of. It's not necessarily an Isle of Wight Council Branston problem. This is a problem for an awful lot of developers. The actual connectivity of things like services, water, gas, electricity, you can easily wait a year from the initial contact for anything to happen, and that's private developers, small developers, whatever. So I don't think that's necessarily a Branston problem.
sorry, that's the end of that item. And appointments to committees and outside bodies. So I would defer this to the monitoring officer to speak on this item, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Since writing the report, I just need to inform and update members. There is also a vacancy currently on the Audit Committee following Councillor Bacon's resignation from the Audit Committee. Now, there are a number of matters which are set out in the report, and there's been a request this evening that each item be voted on separately. So if that's the wish of the meeting, what I propose is to deal with it in a alphabetical order, whereas the report set out matters in more council committees and then boards and then outside bodies. So the first item I'd ask members to consider, please, is the vacancy on the Appeals Committee for a non-voting co-opted member. This is, as the report indicates, those situations where there are conduct matters where one needs a town, parish or community councillor to be on the particular body. Now, nominations, as far as I'm aware, which have been received, and please correct me if there are other nominations, but nominations have been received that Councillor Mick Lyons be appointed, with a substitute being Councillor Patricia Redpath. Are there any other sort of nominations from the floor at all?
No.
Thank you, Chair. And then in which case, in accordance with the request for each item dealt separately, the appropriate motion for to be moved, not by me, but by Councillor and seconded, would be that Councillor Mick Lyons, with Councillor Patricia Redpath as substitute, be appointed to serve as the non-voting co-opted member of the on the Leader.
Seconder, Councillor Quigley.
And is that the wish of all present that that motion be affirmed?
Would you raise your hand if you're
Thank you.
majority? Is there anyone that would like to vote against or abstain?
We've got a couple of abstentions. Sorry, three. Four abstentions.
4 abstentions. Councillor Mosdale says.
Yeah, 5.
5 abstentions.
Okay, thank you.
you.
So, Chair, sort of moving on, there is an item in the report to do with a vacancy for the Armed Forces Day Organising Committee. This is actually a nomination, and I understand that a request has been made that more information be provided on this particular vacancy, and therefore the proposal for members to consider is that this item actually be deferred to a subsequent meeting. Is that the wish of members?
Yeah, proposer for.
Okay, and that's the wish.
No, we're doing an alphabetical order. Sorry, Councillor Andre. Yes, Mr. Potter did say he was doing an alphabetical order. So do I have a proposer to defer that item? Yeah. And a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Is everyone okay with deferring that item till we have more information on that post?
Okay, yeah. That seems to be.
Does anyone like to vote against or abstain from that? No, I think that's carried.
Thank you, Chairman. And that sort of brings me on to obviously one is looking to the Alliance Group to put forward a nomination, should they wish to do so at this particular meeting, for the vacancy on the Audit Committee. Otherwise, it can be deferred.
Councillor Andre?
Point of order, Chair. Is it the Audit Committee?
It is, and the other one. There's the Audit Committee as well as.
Yes, there was an addition which has been made to the report orally tonight. It didn't actually make it on the written report, but there is reference at the very beginning of the report to cover off the fact that other vacancies might be put, and this is one which we actually need to deal with. But thank you for seeking clarification, Councillor Andre. Thank you. So, is there a nomination from the Alliance Group for the vacancy on the Audit Committee? Or is it to be deferred? in that case, may I suggest that be deferred for a subsequent meeting.
Thank you. I think we didn't have required awareness of that.
And then, Chairman, we obviously are now moving on, if my alphabetic's correct, to the Health and Wellbeing Board. As members can see from the report, there is a vacancy for a voting co-opted member on the Health and Wellbeing Board, and the nomination has been put forward, as far as I'm aware this evening, and there may be other nominations, are as set out in the report, that Councillor Shirley Smart with Councillor Emily Brothers board. And again, that would need to be a motion from the floor from a councillor and seconded if members.
Just have confirmed that the Health and Wellbeing Board is different to everything else we're dealing with here. You accept nominations from all sorts of external bodies such as the St Mary's Health Trust, the CCG or whatever it's called, police and such. This comes from IWALC, as I guess, Islay Association of Local Councils. Do we have to endorse the IWALC nominee, given that we don't endorse the nominees of any of the other organisations that are party to this? For instance, the Vice Chair was and may still be a member of the Health and Wellbeing Board from the voluntary sector. I don't believe that's ever been endorsed by full council in the past. Why should local councils be discriminated against? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reddy. Mr. Potter, are you able to speak on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Brodie. Just looking through the council's existing constitution in terms of the Health and Wellbeing Board, it does specifically talk about an Isle of Wight Association of Local Councils, IWALC representative, and that is presumably follows through from the nominations which have been put forward, as far as I'm aware.
I believe procedure.
That this isn't in our gift, this is in the gift of the Health and Wellbeing Board, who've set up their own constitution for that board and have invited IWAL to make a nominee. And I don't think it's for us to vet who that is. Sorry if I'm being, I know I like to be awkward, but this is a fair point. Thank you.
Chair, actually the Health and Wellbeing is a statutory committee, and therefore it is part of this.
Would you like to add to that, Mr. Potter?
Yes, certainly, Chairman. First of all, Councillor Brodie, you're not being awkward, nor is any councillor raising issues to be brought to the attention of others. The Constitution, Councillor Love is corrected. Obviously, it is a sort of a constituted formal committee of the council under Section 102 of the Government Act 72. And the terms of the Constitution, the membership of the Health and Wellbeing Board is set out as I've indicated in terms of their vacancy for a representative for the Isle of Wight Association of Local Councils. Obviously, when the council's constitution is periodically reviewed, then the issue raised by Councillor Brodie can certainly be sort of raised again, and that'll be for that time for members to decide whether or not things ought to be changed. So, thank you.
Yeah, just to absolute clarity. The bodies on the Health and Wellbeing Board, such as the Isle of Wight Voluntary Sector Forum. Thank you.
Mr. Potter, clarify that.
Well, yes, at the moment, the item on the agenda is in relation to the vacancy, etc. But certainly sort of issues like this would, in terms of best practice, always benefit from a refresh. And also that relates to the annual appointments to outside bodies and so forth. So certainly, but at the moment we're restricted on the agenda in terms of what's before this extraordinary council meeting. So therefore, unless there are any other nominations put forward in relation to the vacancy, that's a motion be put forward from the floor that Councillor Shirley Smart with Councillor Emily Brothers, acting as substitute, be appointed to serve as the voting co-opted member on the Health and Wellbeing Board, which is a committee of the council, as indicated by Councillor Love.
Councillor Love?
Yes, I would just want to check how widely we've actually trawled for nominations in this particular matter. It's not that I feel unhappy about the people that are nominated. I just want to be sure that other people have had the opportunity to be nominated. Can you just give us a little bit more insight into that? Because I'm not aware of this particular process.
Councillor Love. Yes, basically, it's my understanding that IWOLC were approached. Those names have been supplied to the council. That's my understanding. If I'm wrong, then please let me know. That's my understanding.
Can I have a supplement, please?
Councillor Love? Councillor Luciani?
Thank you, Chair. I do actually know both nominees that are put forward, as I'm sure most councillors here know the fantastic service that Councillor Shirley Smart gave to this council over many years, and also in the same position as yourself, Chair. But Councillor Emily Brothers may not be known to many members of this council, but Councillor Emily Brothers was elected to Sandown Council 18 months ago, and I have served with Councillor Brothers since then, and I can tell you, Councillor Brothers will be an incredible asset to the Health and Wellbeing Board, and I thoroughly support this nomination. Thank you.
Councillor Love?
I'm sorry, Chair. I'm not happy with the process. Point is that I'm not disputing that these people will serve very, very well. What I'm asking about is the process of consultation and it being offered out into the wider opportunity, not targeted at one particular body. And whilst that might be difficult for some of my colleagues sitting here, it's about fairness across the whole board, and I'm not convinced that this has been searched. I'm sorry, but that is my view.
Councillor Luciani?
I think this goes back to what Councillor Brodie's asking in some ways. So we actually are voting because we've asked IWOLC, not because actually and then the monitoring officer's asking for other nominations, which makes no sense to me. We're either validating because we've asked IWOLC to do it, or we're asking for other people. It's too complicated. Thank you.
Through you, Chairman, just to sort of hopefully clarify, then obviously other councillors might want to deal with it. This does relate to a vacancy on the Health and Wellbeing Board. The Constitution reiterating that it's a joint committee of the council, and that there is a vacancy in relation, as far as I understand, for the Isle of Wight Association of Local Councils. And Councillor Brodie has rightly indicated that there ought to be some consideration at some future meeting as to whether or not it is appropriate for the present list of organisations be continued, or whether or not it ought to be changed. That's not the item of business for this evening, but it is a legitimate point to have been raised by Councillor Brodie and by Councillor Love and indeed others. Thank you.
So maybe we could address that with a motion at another time. Have you something different to add to that? Okay. Councillor Brodie?
Chair, yes, I just think that if it helps Councillor Love, we do this through IWOLC, not only in terms of the Health and Wellbeing Board, which I think is slightly different, but we also do it for the Corporate Scrutiny Committee, where Cameron Palin in the gallery there is elected by the IWALC executive, which is a representative of each member council, but it is not opened up to selected from its executive members. So and I mean, Cameron Palin's and his Cowstown Council, which you're a member of. So essentially, you could be questioning that as well, because that is a voting member of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee. Chair, can I propose that we endorse Shirley Smart as a representative and Councillor Emily Brothers as the substitute, and let's get on with what the real business of today is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. And seconder, Councillor Andre. All those in favour of that nomination? Would anyone like to vote against? And any abstentions, please? 2, 3, 6 abstentions. Okay, that motion's carried. And the last appointment?
The last but one, Chairman, there is a vacancy on the Planning Committee following the resignation of Councillor Michael Lilly from the Planning Committee. Are there any nominations to fill that vacancy? Thank you.
Councillor Luciani.
I propose Debbie Andre.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Please do. Oh. So Laura first, Councillor Medlands, I don't mind who it's on.
And obviously, I think so Councillor Andre is going to indicate whether she's willing to.
Councillor Andre, are you willing to take that position?
I was just going to say that I accept the nomination. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Chairman, then sort of given that nominations been given by the Alliance Group, what I suggest is that the motion is effectively that Councillor Debbie Andre be appointed to serve on the Planning Committee to fill the vacancy arising from Councillor Michael Lilly's resignation from the Planning Committee. And if that's sort of formally accepted to the motion, seconded, and then put to the vote. Thank you.
Is there anyone who'd like to vote against? Any abstentions? No, that one is carried. Thank you.
And thank you, Chair. This I'm pleased to bring the matter towards the end. Just to let members know, it's already listed in the report. There is currently an ongoing vacancy at the Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Neighbourhoods and Regeneration for one of the unaligned. Council looked at it last time and were happy to keep it as an ongoing vacancy. And again, I take it that members are happy for it to be an ongoing vacancy for the present time. If that's the case, that's the end of item 7, and back to you, Chairman. Thank you.
So there's no nominations for that item. Okay, so those positions are carried, and we move on to a break. I'd like to propose a comfort break now of 10 minutes. Thank you, everyone. We'll now resume the meeting. And now on to item 8, the island planning strategy. And
Before us, we have a recommendation. I've got a motion. Cabinet followed its decision at its meeting on the 8th of September, Appendix 4 be approved, and that it be agreed to publish the draft on planning strategy for representation no earlier than Monday, the 31st of October 2020. To submit the required information to the Planning Inspectorate. The delegated authority be granted to Cabinet Member for Planning Enforcement to agree any final editorial and presentational changes to the draft island planning strategy prior to publication and submission, so long as they do not materially alter the intention of the version agreed by full council. Would you like me to give a little bit of a narrative, Chairman?
yes, please.
Thank you very much. Those who will know me, when the Alliance administration took over in 2022, one of the priorities was to get ourselves an island plan. Time and time again, we're hearing from all across the island, we needed an up-to-date plan and to get that consulted upon. We're here tonight to look at. In that time, I've done a roadshow. I've had some good meetings, and I've had some meetings where I've been members of our public and members of our parish councils. Try to incorporate as much as we possibly can within the new strategy. It isn't a perfect document. I'll be the first one to admit that. Working to ensure that we have a sound targets that government enforces upon us. We've heard heard mention about using up to me. However, what we are told to do is recognise, which again isn't fine, but at the end of the day, what's quite important to a lot of us is the fact that 24 months, but it is important that our plan that comes forward from government. I think those of us who last few months and years will know how things have changed. Unfortunately, some of those politicians' promises aren't really in. We know that that there is still work on the levelling, and I'm hoping that there will be policies in there that will respect the local environment and the needs of local environment and supporting our rural communities on the island. You know, we've had these incorporated as many of those policies in there as we possibly can. There, I think one of the things that has been made quite clear to me during the consultation period, the standard methodology used by government is far too high. We've looked at the evidence, we've used that evidence, to as low as we can. We think we have got that figure in the 400 with that number, but it is the number that we have inspection. So, and that is what we're being advised by the KC, I was going to say QC, KC, Michael Bedford, who has been supporting us. So I'm quite happy to support that. Again, I know that the debate will follow, and I'm quite happy to respond to any questions that come forward from the debate, but I don't want to curtail the debate. It's an important issue for all of the islands. We've tried to do as much as we can incorporate as we can. We've listened to our friends across the chamber. We haven't got everything in that you all wanted, but we have put in as much as we can. We've looked at the Conservative Manifesto pledges. We've incorporated many of those policies. I would like to remind members of the Conservative group of some of the priorities that we had in the Conservative. I will find it in a minute. I have got so many bits of paper here. Right, the Isle of Wight Conservative Manifesto. Revitalising our seaside communities as attractive visitor destinations whilst prioritising brownfield sites for new homes. We've listened to that. They're incorporated within the island plan. Redevelop public sector land, including council property, to deliver an ambitious regeneration of Newport. We've listened to that. It's incorporated within the plan. Secure greater protection for the island's countryside and coastline and deliver our climate change plan. We've listened to that. We've put it in the plan. Those are the three manifesto pledges that all of you members on that side of the chamber has signed up to. We've also added things about the free port. We think that's important. It's government policy. We have incorporated that within the island plan. There is also issues about affordable homes. Recently, a lot of members across the chamber have raised concerns about second homes. We have incorporated policies there. Infrastructure, that came up quite largely in the consultation. We've incorporated those policies. So we are listening to what people across the island are saying. We are listening to what people across the chamber are saying. We haven't taken out allocations of freshwater and Bembridge, and I know that you will be disappointed with that, Joe, and several members of the Conservatives across the chamber will be disappointed about that. But again, if you take allocations out in one part of the island, you've got to put them somewhere else, and then you have to consult on that, and that takes time, unfortunately. Fight at planning appeal stage. Thank you. Within the inspector, sorry.
A seconder to that. Councillor Bacon, thank you. Councillor Jarman. Oh, what, to second it?
I would notice that I had my hand up before Councillor Bacon in that instance and I was missed. I also note that I had my hand up at the beginning of the debate and you invited Councillor Footer to speak in preference to me. That is not in accordance with the normal practice we have here. However, having passed that, and thank you for giving me the floor, I would note that the work... Chair, I have seconded. I do have the right to speak as seconder before anyone else does, I believe.
Okay, Councillor Bacon first, then we'll come back to you, Councillor Jarman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very happy to second this motion, although as this process has to some extent been running since 2016, one might also might say, what else is there to say? I was going to speak about the environment and how it is addressed in the plan, but there was a question earlier and I used up my notes there. And I'm not going to repeat those now. So I would like to make some general points, and I apologise if there's some repetition here, but these are all, I believe, key and essential points. As has been said many times and reiterated this week by our MP, we need a plan and we need a new plan. We need to get away from the current situation where the tilted balance applies. And I think everyone must agree with that. So we need change. We need change now. Delay is dangerous. Delay will be particularly dangerous if it is based on a false or fanciful premise and leads us down a blind alley. It does astound me that some people seem to think or contend that the draft plan has been constructed with the deliberate intention of damaging our environment, or that those drawing up the plan are so ignorant that they've used the wrong rules and data. The plan's been drawn up by professionals, many of whom, I think perhaps all of whom, live on and value our island, and who have done their best within the many constraints that exist. Similarly, much of the course and content of the plan has been scrutinised by a KC, in his correct title now, who is also a government inspector, and that advice has guided the work that's been done. Everyone has done their best, but has done so by using. There's no dispute that the 2021 census data is, that it is inescapable that the government's expected starting point projections. Anything else relies on a case being made for exception. Debate was had last year. We got KC's advice on it. That would not be something we'd be successful at, partly because we're not exceptional. There are at least 50 other authorities in the same position as us. Take a bit from making a legal analogy, but I will. In the legal case on the right law, if you argue the unarguable, you fail your client. Guarantee things will turn out worse for you. And that's exactly what could happen here. It's also been suggested that the law will change. Paul, great if it does. I'm not so confident, but have quite a bit on their plate. And I must note what the Chancellor said on Monday. House building. We will get out of the way to get Britain building and on its feet. Not around the corner, and we need a plan that serves the island. We also know, I think Paul has said this, that if the law does that we're going to enter into, I hope after today, can be paused or in a statement in the press through the MP, given that commitment. That so plain from, if you read the report, there's still a long way to go, but the current in this motion, believing that in light of everything that we've heard about both this evening and plan offers the best we can do as things stand, and we should.
Thank you. Councillor Jarman, would you like to
Chair.
speak?
Oh, it's okay.
Okay, Councillor Lever.
Every meeting, I'm finding it really difficult to hear when people are talking because there's Councillor Mosdale continues to talk while somebody's talking.
Silent during other people speaking, please. Thank you. Councillor Jarman.
Thank you, Chair. As soon as we've dealt with this motion, I will present a motion without notice, as discussed with the monitoring officer. But for this one, I'm quite astonished at the level of disinformation which continues to persist in this debate. If we look at the QC advice, which has just been referenced, the QC did not say that there was no case for exceptional circumstances. The QC very specifically said that they had not seen any evidence to support exceptional circumstances because it had not been presented to them. There is a very great difference between somebody saying there is no case and I've not seen any evidence for that. The second thing is that continual reference is made to NPPF section 61, and only the first sentence of that is ever recorded. It is very simply that, yes, by default, the 2014 projections shall be used. But it then goes on to say, unless, and we all know that planning law and the NPPF contains many uses of the word unless or except. Exceptional circumstances exist otherwise, such as to bring forward data that shows old projections basically to be inaccurate, or that propose to replace out-of-date data with current data. We are in a very fortunate position that we have exceptionally recent and accurate data for this island. We meet that clause. And to say that this island is not exceptional would be to undermine everything that we have done in trying to promote an island deal. The island deal relies on us being exceptional and unique in many ways, and the pressures on us to be exceptional and unique. So I think quite simply, this council relies on the use of accurate and contemporary information. Why should anything in planning be any different? It is clear that the move from historic projections extrapolated from 2011 to 2014 to the present day and onward a further 15 years to 2037 include a significant amount of error. We now have the 2021 actual data on which we can base our proposition. I believe that we should use that accurate information and use our exceptional and unique circumstances to promote that information in a revision to this document. To continue otherwise would be beyond logic in any frame of mind. So I think whilst there are many elements of this document which we can applaud, and certainly the work that's been put into it by the planning staff, we have to realise that it is now based on erroneous use of data. Those projections are out of date. We have more useful, updated and contemporary information which we can put into a revision of the document. Make a proposal on motion without notice to return the DIPs upon the terms originally submitted under motion own and partners' contemporary sources, and hence be brought back to this committee correctly reflecting the actual and urgent needs of our island. Thank you.
Councillor Robertson.
Chair, before I speak, could I find out what I'm speaking to, whether it's the motion of Councillor Fuller or Councillor Jarman, where we are in the meeting?
It's our substantive first motion that we are discussing. The Fuller's motion.
So I should seek a seconder for that motion on.
Through you, Chairman, at the moment we have a motion tabled by Councillor Fuller and seconded by Councillor Bacon, and therefore the debate proceeds on that motion. And until that motion has been disposed of, we can't proceed to debate any further motion. So it's a cab-rank principle at the moment. So it's Councillor Fuller's motion, seconded by Councillor Bacon, and the debate is opened up. Thank you.
Yeah, did you want to speak, Councillor Robertson?
I did want to speak in it, but I give way to Councillor Brodie if it's a technical point.
Okay, Councillor Brodie.
Good point. Can we just clarify that? A motion has been proposed by Councillor Fuller. Councillor Jarman has then what he described as a motion without notice. You know, I'm not sure what that's all about. But if he was to describe that as an amendment to the motion, then surely we should discuss it as an amendment rather than a motion without notice. Thank you.
Mr. Potter.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Brodie. Basically, the substantive motion is, as you heard, Councillor Fuller's motion. I accept, obviously, Councillor Jarman wants to put a motion and have that duly seconded. However, the nature of the motion would be to negate the substantive motion, and therefore it couldn't be, in this instance, be accepted as an amendment. But I'm grateful for the clarity which has been brought to this matter. Thank you.
Chair, I think it was important that that was said. I was aware of that, but clearly I don't think most members were aware. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that, Councillor Brodie. Councillor Robertson.
Will be voting against it. And to address the points that he's made and that Councillor Baker agree, the Cabinet did accept all but one of the amendments in June of this year that then went via the process of corporate scrutiny. To Councillor Bacon, suggesting that anyone who doesn't back this plan is some stage. I have consulted with the officers, including only for this plan, without criticising the work of the officers who in June of this year. But there has been a game changer, and the game changer is this year was published, and we now know that the current draft is based on is wrong. And I just do not understand how any councillor plan we know provides for a greater population. It does not matter to me what the standard method data is wrong. We know it's wrong, and it's not right. I've said an awful lot on this subject. I think it's remarkable that it has been called as an exchange. There was nothing wrong with waiting a few more weeks. It has been deliberately timed when a member not in my or recovering from hospital, and when a member in my group is a democratic mandate in this chamber to get this plan through and to defeat the majority view of 39 councillors, which should be expressed at the annual full council. And I urge councillors for months. Thank you.
Councillor Medland.
Thank you, Chair. I had prepared a very nice typed speech, which of course I've lost somewhere between leaving her home and arriving tonight. So I've now got some scribbled notes, so I should be fairly concise, I hope, this evening. I would say this discussion about the draft Ireland strategic plan has been the most difficult political problem that we've had to deal with within the Alliance. It's put me in a minority against the majority, and we've had an extraordinarily difficult time trying to resolve this. And it's not been easy, and but you know, the point is that we sometimes just disagree. We were bound to disagree on certain occasions. The plan as it stands, it has generally good policies, as we've heard some of them this evening. But it has large rural allocations which contradict the policies of the plan, particularly things like the biosphere, Mission Zero, local emerging local transport plan. And kind of overall, it contradicts itself, in my opinion. That's what it was felt anyway, because it didn't really make an awful lot of sense logically. So then this year, as Councillor Robertson said, we have a completely different set of circumstances, not just the statistics, the correct statistics, but also the fact we're in a clear recession. We're facing high inflation. We have high building costs. We have potentially falling house prices, perhaps estimated 20%, none of which is particularly beneficial for private developers. And I can't imagine they'll be rushing to build lots of houses in the next few years, which leaves us in a serious problem because we've got a major housing crisis. We've heard about it. We've got a huge contraction, thanks to COVID and what's happened since, in our rented sector. So we've lost about 83% of our rented properties since 2020. This has been a disaster for our housing market. And with this sense, I did study population policy in university, and I mean, I've never seen such horrific, I've never seen such a terrible population, what we used to call it a pyramid when I was at university. It used to be like this, with the old people at the top. We now have a mushroom cloud, kind of atomic bomb. Of working people and children under 65. It's an impossible situation. It means economic decline. It means falling out, but it means an inability to cope with the care and health issues being raised. Unless we somehow bring more young people to the island, we have an enormous problem ahead. So this is my, this is how I feel now. I just feel, I can't even feel that the plan can be amended. It needs to go back. We need to start again with the new situation we have. You need to start again with a situation where we have to plan for how do we provide that housing for that critical group of people. And then we start from that. And we don't start with the government allocations. We start with our basic needs. And I think this is where we need to start. And in terms of the paper and the logic of the paper, I suggest that we go back to, I think it's paragraph 36, which describes how we are, of course, exceptional. We're an island, higher building costs, etc. And to say we're not exceptional is quite an odd thing to have heard from Councillor Bacon, because islands are different to mainland authorities. Is that my time up? Beg your pardon.
Thank you, Councillor Medland.
I too think that there has been some misinformation. I see we've got hands up. Will you stop my time, please, if they're going to? I thought it was an interruption, but oh, okay. The seems to me is this, and it was just said just now, and that is pursue an exceptional circumstance. Would be the June, that was this year, that there is not, as far as I am aware, subsequent to June. Has never been disclosed in any event, although I've seen it in my the task and finish group. I'm not permitted to disclose that there is no KC's advice on the exceptional case some of us wish to pursue. And it is wholly wrong and very irritating. Decision should be urged to be taken on erroneous suggestions. The next point I want to raise, and I know that the time is going, that none of us are talking about very much, is how we have had years of developers building houses that don't solve the problem. This is going to solve the problem. And why are we doing this to our public, to our residents? I've seen it true. What I don't want to do is go on with this lie. I want to start to build proper houses for people who need them. Pass this plan and we will still have nearly 2,000 people on the housing register, or just over 2,000 people. People on the housing register don't get a sniff at the houses that we're building. Someone in the public gallery asked how many people on the public housing register will benefit from this plan, and it couldn't be answered because we don't know. The research hasn't been done. We owe it to our island residents to do this properly. Now, two very other quick things is it would be a crime, in my opinion, to build housing that we don't need. It would be a crime to build that housing on greenfield. It would be a crime to build it on brownfield. Building houses creates climate change, both in the construction and thereafter. Building houses creates a certain number, depending on the size of the house, of CO2 emissions. If I'll be permitted, because I did think I'd been interrupted, so just a couple of extra points.
2 seconds.
We will be imposing on our people, because we're building houses we don't need, bulging sewers, discharges onto our beaches, discharges into the SPAs, and all because we just want to say, and I think there is a vanity in this, we've solved the housing crisis. Well, you haven't and you won't until you start looking at this realistically and not politically.
Thank you, Councillor Spink. Councillor Brading.
Sorry?
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with that, Charlotte. I'd like to thank Councillor Fuller for the work he's put in. It's been over 5 years in the preparation of this plan, and so a lot of work and time has gone into it as well. Councillor Medler made some really good points. This is a very difficult political decision. It's a decision we make for the good of the island. I'm sure we could all come up with an example of one thing in our ward that we don't want in the plan. But it's not about that. The plan in itself and context is really good. It covers all parts of the island. Yes, I have concerns about some of the greenfield sites in the plan. Too many and not enough brownfield sites. But that can be adjusted over time. But I'm acutely aware, as Councillor Andre is now, that we have a dreadful crisis for our young people getting housing, getting on the housing market. So we have to build the right sort of houses. No more 4-bedroom houses for second homeowners. We've got to build the right sort of properties in the right sort of areas. So lots of good parts in the plan, lots of adjustments we need to plan. I'm a data person. I've been all my life dealing with data. And I have to agree with what's been said. You know, Councillor Jarman sent a lovely paper through last night that I sat and read last night. The data in this plan is flawed. The housing number is far too high in the wrong sort of housing. We are an exceptional island. We need to stand up and look like one and make the plan on the correct data. And a lot of people in this chamber are very data conscious. And we need the data right. It's not difficult to correct the data. Context of the plan is really strong. Or non-political as it should be. On balance, I will be voting for the plan, but for the reasons I've outlined, I will be voting against this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Fuller and the planning staff who have indeed engaged with me for some time on my concerns about this plan. I want to take myself back to 1976 when my parents took me to a house in Midway Lake and we walked around that house. An extraordinary thing to be able to walk around a house. We lived in 2 rooms as a family. That was a council house. And I give you that personal context because I do not want anybody to think that I do not understand the dire situation of so many people on the island. I grew up in poverty and was grateful for the fact that we got to live in suitable accommodation for many years. But I cannot support this plan. A few years ago, the Conservatives brought forward a plan that would have in the ward that I represent 1,805 as the housing target. The plan that was brought out last year for consultation had a figure of 1,440 and a red line for development that went right to the edge of ancient woodland, triple SIs, sites of importance for nature conservation in Parkhurst Forest. It also included other lands which people would describe as green fields. I'm not a hypocrite. I do believe that some of our development over the future will have to be on what we call green fields. But I'm acutely concerned about two impacts of the numbers still being put forward. We've managed through the consultation, and I'm grateful to Councillor Fuller and the planning staff for adjusting the figure downwards and the red line inwards from the forest to 1,025. But that's an enormous amount of development to place in an area that, because it's bounded the east and to the south, onto roads that are already under great strain, in an area of infrastructure that's under great strain, in a town that's also being asked to take further of this allocation, and on a road that, of course, connects up to northwards and to Cowes, where there is further allocation. So there are those impacts there. In April, I set these concerns out to Councillor Fuller and planning officers. We're 5 months onwards, and unfortunately, the only thing I seem to have ever got back is, does it look better to you now that you've looked at it again? There hasn't been this effort to achieving my vote on this plan, despite its imperfections, and yet that has not come forward. So I will not be voting some very, very good things, but because the thing that we went out to consultation impacts of a level of development in part this time.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
This stage of the island plan, this is, for me, this is about look at it, seeing which bits are valid, which bits he likes, which he doesn't like. It's fine, but once we went through it, we had a robust plan that we've all been working for. Talk about the island plan, you know, in this chamber, but it isn't actually our plan. This is that are coming up. You get the young people who are at school now or leaving college now. My working life, and you know, I would like average wage on the island, which at the moment is about £420. We wanted to raise to £600 a week by 2020. And it actually feeds right into the motion that we have to create a resilient island. We have to create the circle can grow. So lots of talk about housing. This, and that is desperately needed. Our housing stock on Zero event a couple of weeks ago, I was, you know, quite shocked to see that our younger people are living in. We have to do something. You know, there's forward. We've got the two areas of community areas are recognising their significance as a very important land, which are allocated across 6 different sites for employment to enable more. Our high streets, building on the success of our houses in Newport and Ryde, that's in, you know, our land, our natural land, and also our built heritage as well. Are in travel plans for major development because we've got the local in the workshops, looking at 20-minute neighbourhood design principles. This is really great stuff. This is so important. towns and our villages to be able to live in this way. The community section is fantastic. I could go on.
Thank you, Chairman. When Mr. Fuller took over as planning, he actually took for planning, and he asked me what the most important thing he could possibly do was. And through, it was already 5 years out of date when. So I'm very pleased to see that it is coming forward now, because one of the things I would flag up to people that are, now you can use the latest ONS data, but what I would given for low population growth on the island is because we haven't been building. Can't move here anyway because there's nowhere for them to live. So situation. Going forward, of course, the number. So we're entering a recession period. Money is going to like on a piece of paper. But how are those going to be delivered when there isn't the money? Overdevelopment, but it's never going to happen if there's not an economic argument. I'm also concerned that if we hesitate, looking at the numbers again, but if we hesitate, what I've not currently included within the allocation zones are being brought forward because developers know they won't get them. So we are in danger of allowing, in almost incentivizing them to come forward now because we don't have the correct. One thing I would take some issue with is the full plan. There are other documents that should be also moving forward, and I'm particularly supposed to back it up. Also, 10 years out of date, more. We haven't been working on those. So I'll be pushing on that and other things going forward. But
Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. Just as, and I've stated this in the corporate scrutiny meeting earlier in the month, the last other points about the ONS data. It's data, it's there, you can see it. Although that data, so there are some questions there. The only thing I'm trying to using the ONS data against the advice of officers and others, and my interpretation of what that means, and the risk that would put the plan in. And then the second thing, government, if we don't have a plan, and no, I do not. Kwarteng have led a government that they themselves have to nice apolitical organisations, usually like the RSPB and the Wildlife Trust. Growth is something that's been repeated recently, and the risk of putting a plan at risk, essentially, of not delivering, and what that would mean for the island without a plan in place. And no, I do not. So I'll be voting for this plan.
Lee.
We're going to have to make, we are in a rock and a hard place. Or vote with our conscience. My conscience is to actually vote this draft process. If we get the draft plan, actually vote it, it will go, there will be a consultation, allow all the issues that you've actually raised forward to the planning inspectorate. It would allow communities to have a direct voice. It will go through a consultation period and then it will actually come make the vote or decide on it. There is an actual process. We recently had the Lga peer review and we had some very from Cornwall, from Essex, Scilly Isles and others who are very people from the Lga and planning. And they said, if there's one thing you control your planning was to actually get a draft plan this autumn onto them, because they said likely to lose your LPA status. And there is an authority that Uttersfield District Council, which is in the inside housing, now had that taken away from them, and Bristol will decide on plan. That is the reality that we have got tonight. If we do not keep, we'll still be in special measures, and remember we are in special measures. And the developers that we perhaps have not delivered, the landowners that have, and we all want affordable housing, but those developers will be laughed. We can carry on because a number of the applications, a number of the things that are going to be coming to our planning, and actually planning policy framework, we can start issues, but we've got to say yes tonight.
I've really been toing and froing with this, mainly because in the plan, an industrial estate for Sandown Airport. The way my residents want it, it means that Lake and Apseed no longer have any land between. It will just be a great big industrial. But there's actually stuff in the plan that's come before planning and the community. No logic in that to me, but I was going to go ahead. Stuff in it. There is loads of really good stuff in it. You know, officers have worked. Last night, I read that document from Councillor Jarman. That document, and it made real sense to me. You know, I might be a bit of a geek. Voting against this, and hopefully if we all stop waffling, we'll get time to vote for Councillor Jarman's motion and send it back to Cabinet and get the data looked at.
Councillor Quigley.
Thank you. There's lots to talk about the census. I would have thought the 2021 census was affected for one way or another by COVID, as everything else has. So I'm not sure what onus we should put on that. I'm also intrigued to hear which developers are building houses that aren't needed, because they'd be a pretty specialist developer.
When I first joined the council, a senior Conservative councillor said to me, because I was quite new to it, the island plan is 70% written by Conservatives, 20% statutory and 10% written by the Alliance. I was quite proud of that. So you'd have all been in the same situation as we are now. That same council then said to me after the AGM that because the Conservative group didn't get the seats they wanted on the committees and take control of the committees they wanted to, they wouldn't now be voting for the island plan. So you have to work out, is this a political move or are you doing this for the good of the island? There's several hundred pages in the plan, and there's some really good stuff in there. Increasing average incomes to £600 a week, which is where the national average is. We're way behind. Improving health outcomes, education outcomes, protecting the island against climate change, amongst other plans for a better future for the island. To let it become a NIMBY's charter really goes against everything I think we all claim we got into politics for, and that is to make the island a better place. So voting against it really is you're voting against increasing people's wages, you're voting against the improved health outcomes, you're voting against improved education outcomes, and you're abandoning the island to climate change. So I'd like you to consider, before we all go home to our nice comfortable homes tonight, what we really think we are voting for.
Councillor Love.
Thank you, Chair. I've sat here tonight and listened to the debate, bouncing backwards and forwards from all places. Actually, it's been a really good debate. There's been lots of things tabled. I admit that I sat in the middle and I kind of thought, well, maybe I might abstain, maybe I'll vote for it, maybe I'll vote against it. Why was I elected? I was elected to represent the people of my community, not myself and my own feelings. I was here to represent them. My feelings about this is that it's been going on since 2016 as this review, so to say, that we desperately need it, and we need it quickly. It's not the most perfect of plans. In fact, it's got lots of faults, but as Councillor Quigley has just said now, it's got lots of positives to it as well, and we do need to do it. The process does not end tonight because we either vote for it or against it. It will continue either way because it has to, and it has to do the best that it can for the people moving forward into the future. So we seem to have got hung. You know, I don't want millions of houses built in my area. Do not have any housing, and it doesn't matter what we do build, okay? And that's a fact. They will build what they want to for our community as possible. Gives me some reassurances that we're going to have a 6-week consultation if this. So from my perspective, I will be voting for this. Everything changed this week at government because nobody's going to be able to afford to buy them with the interest rates. And
Councillor Quirk.
There's been a lot of over-exaggerations. This is a plan for the next 15 years. It's important to get it right in the first place. Takes to sort the plan out, but it's got to be right for the next 15 years. Councillor Lilly scaremongers about us being. If that happens, you'll get a couple of warnings, and we haven't had any warning. Of local authorities in the same position as we are, they're not going to suddenly all of those authorities. What we're the long-term future, and it's really important that we get to sort of try and influence that decision. We should make the right decision. Numbers right.
Councillor Brodie.
Unlike a lot of councillors in the room, this plan, probably because he's too busy, as with the rest of the alliance. But saying that, sorry, apart from you, Ian, to be fair, argument about numbers, about some of the sites, etc. Housing. I agree with Councillor Quigley about many of the things he mentioned. Second most essential housing human need. Currently, due to government policy and Isle of Wight £50 million loan agreement of last February, is through a percentage of private development. Very concerned about how much rented affordable housing I am the councillor who has seen more housing development in Meadows development, over 700 houses so far, 800 of those are rented from the 255 as set under the current island plan. That's 200 Association of the Islands Housing Register. The percentages would be far worse. Only 53% of the 3/4 affordable rent. That would mean only 135 at Palm Meadows would have been less. Extrapolate that over 10 years, that's 700 homes. As it stands, I have no desire to update the island of the tilted balance, because until we have an island, I'm not that interested. I can still go to planning committee, regularly do when we approve housing, as happened with the Westridge Farm. Homes, what on earth are they? They're entirely unaffordable. And yet we're going to allocate 25% of the affordable, struggling on part-time earnings on 10 quid an hour. Of course they're going. In conclusion, much as I see there's many housing deficiencies, I will vote against this draft plan. Represent the families I represent and hopefully give them a home.
Firstly, which is basically flawed. I just find that an incredible send out to our residents a plan which has basically your information. The birth rate across the whole of Europe has our primary school intake has dropped certainly for the next 4 to 5 years. Those are facts. Thirdly, the day before yesterday, I sat in and levelling up, whatever that means, along with 2-3 other MPs, county councillors, and I stood up and said, we are building the wrong house. All I can say to you is the room erupted and I got the biggest lot. But the point was, the MP sat down because, as I pointed out, it isn't only the Isle of Wight this applies to. Counties such as Somerset, Devon, Cornwall. Make no mistake, folks, we've all to unite together and stop this building.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Fuller. He has worked extremely hard on this. I listened to him at a scrutiny meeting and I contacted him afterwards. Is that what you meant? And he who confirmed that what Paul said was absolutely right. Described the process, no problem at all. I also asked the question, likely are we to lose our planning powers? And the very, very unlikely. So let's say that, you know, that it's important that we build what we need. Degree of freedom to developers to build what Bedlam describes the mushroom, and he's right. We feel with younger people. They can't afford the same can afford. And I just ask you, can you honestly say that you're voting for 480 houses? Chairman.
Councillor Stevens.
I've got to make sure you all can hear me on the back row over there. Great stuff. Okay. I want to come in and I want to say thank you, Ian. We do need the right houses. This is one way that we can achieve it, is going forward with the island plan. I take on board what Councillor Brodie said. Councillor Brodie and myself have had conversations across the board about this, as we have. And I think that that's only right. But we have to respect the fact that over the last few years, and once again, I'm going to pull out the stats, and I'll just go back a few years. Let's say 2017-18, 360 houses completed, 18 affordable homes. 2018 to 19, 350 houses built, 0 homes. 2019 to 20, 253 homes completed, 6 affordable. 2021, 445 houses and 123 built. And 21 to 22, 114 affordable homes out of the 490. Now, at the moment, the target rate for a developer, I suppose, is if you start to look above 400, 500 houses. We're nowhere near that. We're nowhere near that. We're not going to be near that. So why are you stuck on a figure and starting to cause concern to the people of the Isle of Wight? We're not building that. And as I said, in 2019, 0 affordable homes, 80%. Now, this island planning strategy actually lowers the rate from 80% down to about 62. I'd like to see it lower. I think that then you can start to say it's affordable for island people. At this moment in time, if you leave the status quo and you hang about for another year, that's another year of 80% costing to for an affordable house. It's not right. It's not right that our people, some living in caravans, as I've said before, some in B&B and some in temporary accommodation. We have to start now. We have to get the ball rolling with this. We've got another 6 weeks consultation, and you all know that you can contribute, as your residents do. Contribute. Let's get this through this evening. Let's make sure that we work our socks off to make it a success. To me, the big obstacle here, and I'll just say that as far as I'm concerned, I'll just give you the quote again: 1,229 one-bedroom residences required. Now that's what we're looking at. Now let's see if we can change and switch it from 4 and 5 bedrooms down to the 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom. Thank you.
I'm going to take one more. Councillor Dorr.
Okay. I wasn't actually going to chat on this tonight. I came in open-minded, 50-50. I'm still not 100%. Councillor Mosdell said something really interesting about the paper that Councillor Jarman sent out last night, and that actually started to push me one way. The problem is, I've heard Councillor Jarman talk in a previous paper, or the 700 independent pages of advice from legal professionals, planning professionals, and other input. Tricky. Councillor Garrett raises a really good point too about the boundaries and protecting the edges, but with no plan in place, it's open season now. Someone could bosh that in tomorrow, so that doesn't hold water. What reassures me about this is it's a win-win situation, because we're just voting to put a plan into place. We've got a 6-week consultation period, so you can heap in all the information to the planning inspector. And if it's no good, they'll bin it off, or we can amend it. We can play with it. It's jumping out of a plane without a reserve parachute. If we just sit here and do nothing, we've got a consultation, we can draft and redraft, and then we get a vote. And if we're not happy, we bin it off. We start over. I might be completely wrong and thicker than a whale omelette, but at the moment, it's open season, and if we do absolutely nothing, we really are failing our residents. And I'm not going to do that. I'm absolutely not. Because in 6 weeks, you can't tell me that a set of professionals can't crunch these census numbers too. And the other thing there, that could go tits up. It could go the wrong way. And actually, the planning inspector goes, sorry, Chief, no, 800 houses for you. We've got no idea which way the government are going. So we shouldn't even be having that discussion. This is for us to put forward, get it into consultation. If we don't like it, bin it off. But at the moment, there is absolutely no protection. And all through this document, risk, 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 risk. I don't like risk. I do like a reserve parachute. And that actually is why I'm going to support it tonight. I thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move to the vote now. I was going to say, would you like a right of reply, Councillor Fuller?
Thank you very much. I would like to come back on some of the issues that were raised. I can see Councillor Brodie looking at me. I remember we attended a meeting. I was invited to a meeting in Newport last year. At that meeting, Councillor Brodie said to me, oh, I wish you'd meet with my residents. Would you meet with my residents up at Pan? And I said to Councillor Brodie at the time, I'm happy to meet with your residents up at Pan. I'm happy to meet. Emails out to all members and has been happy to have one-to-ones with all councillors. Has their own individual needs for their own individual communities that I'm happy to do. Enough, Councillor Brodie, but I did approach you at that meeting. If you never got those emails. One of the things that Councillor his motion, his suggestion is about that it is raised within the documentation about you to the attention of a policy, paragraph 51, where F's standard methodology uses. That is worthwhile considering. We have seen a drop in household in the last 10 years, downsizing, smaller households. It is imperative when you look at the housing demand that we have, the need of local, and this is something that this plan tries to do. It's places for the right people, and that is what I am trying to achieve. And one of the things that one of the advisors to the government, you should keep going with your plans, and you shouldn't be holding on for some. Holding on to maybes. That is something that comes from this government. This 100,000 homes a year across the country. We're not meeting. This third, 479 is a lot of houses. Exceptional circumstances. I made a very big play on exceptional circumstances. Do you know how many times by planning authorities across the country? For example, exceptional circumstances, there was an allowance to build more homes, not less. Exceptional circumstances argument that we are using. Community groups, we've been out to our MP, our peer review, they all say taking it to the long grass. We need to move forward with this. It all ends. It still has to come back to full council. The opportunity to turn this down. What I'm asking members to do is vote in support of this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I expected that. A name vote, and I would very much want that too. Thank you.
There's a named vote being called, and it's on Councillor Fuller's motion. The list I've got, read it all out, so your name will come up. So if you could please indicate simply for, against, or abstain when I read.
For.
Councillor Andre.
For.
Councillor Baker. Dorr.
For.
Councillor Downer. Councillor Jarman.
Against.
Councillor Councillor Lever.
For.
Councillor Lilly. Councillor Lucioni.
For.
Councillor Medland.
For.
Councillor Garrett.
For.
Councillor Beston. Councillor Brading. Hendry.
Against.
Councillor Mostell. Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Peace.
Against.
Councillor Price.
Against.
Councillor Cook. Councillor Robertson.
Against.
Councillor Spink. Councillor Critchison.
4.
Councillor.
The motion so that motion is lost. Jarman?
Thank you, Chair. I now proceed to according to the original submission, which is in the document at 9B, that we the Cabinet for reconsideration, taking into account the serious. Thank you. I seek for a seconder of that motion.
So we now have that motion on the floor. You need to specify your objections as to why it's going forward. Jarman's motion without notice, which is the same as indicates the reasons why there's objection by the council. Should that
We want to go straight to the vote on that?
Yes, please.
On this process, because this motion on no's is the odd. I never got any clarification. I've certainly prepared that I would like to have had considered. I'm not going to have that opportunity because for the entire 3 minutes if necessary, which I think I'm allowed to do. As to why this alleged motion without data on our agenda is going to be railroaded to consider properly, and we could the evening on unnecessary items for an extraordinary. Remember, in April, when I was chair of this council, I questions from members of the public and the draft island unnecessary items. To be frank, having all those nominations issues but before the island plan was very remiss. This can be dealt with now without any democratic debate. I don't agree with the contents of 9B. About this numbers argument, that I have concerns about some objections regarding affordable plan is addressing and in fact is reducing our figures that probably none of you took in, worked very successfully at the Pan Meadows development in my ward that was built, the affordable housings were built between 2010 and 15. So, Chair, to be frank, I hope you're not going to railroad this through. Chair, I think you could have avoided this situation if you hadn't agreed all the ridiculous stuff that we've had on our agenda before item 8 tonight. And I hope you'll reflect on what an extraordinary full council should be if you should be asked to call one in future. Because frankly, I think you played fast and loose with the constitution of the Isle of Wight Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. Do we have an explanation on the process going forward that we can agree on?
Chair, if I may, as a point of order, I believe we have a motion which is seconded, and I think our constitution calls that motions that have been seconded must be dealt with immediately.
Chair.
Okay, then the meeting is ended.
Chair, the motion is before you and must be dealt with. If you leave it for it to rest, it must be dealt with as the first item at the next meeting.